Amanda told herself it was irritation. That was easier than admitting she kept looking for the same woman in every room. This is an original fictional story. Any resemblance to real people, places, or events is purely coincidental. By Monday morning, Amanda had built herself a plan. Distance, not avoidance. Avoidance was clumsy. Avoidance invited interpretation, and Amanda Mercer did not make a habit of behaving in ways other people could interpret with confidence. Distance was different. Distance was strategic. Distance was what intelligent women created when something small threatened to become inconvenient. She would keep things brief, professional, and impersonal. She would stop entering the executive kitchen unless absolutely necessary. She would stop noticing when Sofia Bennett stepped into a room. She would stop replaying the pressure of calm fingers around her wrist at 1:30 in the morning like it had meant anything at all. It was a very good plan. It lasted until 8:07. Amanda stepped onto the executive floor in a fitted cream blouse under a charcoal blazer, black skirt sharp enough to make softness look like a rumor, gold hair immaculate, tablet in one hand, coffee still pending. The city beyond the glass walls was gray with low cloud, rain threatening but not yet falling. Assistants moved in practice lines. Someone from legal turned a corner too quickly, saw her, and visibly corrected his own posture before speaking to another human being. Normal. Useful. Correct. Amanda crossed toward the executive kitchen and stopped dead in the doorway. Sofia was already there. Standing at the far counter with one of the junior analysts, coffee in hand, dark hair pulled back cleanly, dark blouse simple enough to suggest she didn't need clothes to perform competence for her. The analyst was explaining something with the half-panicked intensity of someone who had discovered a problem before 9 a.m. and had not yet decided whether it was survivable. Sofia listened. That was the thing Amanda was beginning to resent most. She really listened. Not in the exaggerated, corporate coach way people used when they wanted to seem emotionally literate. Just with the kind of attention that made the other person slow down without realizing why. The analyst said something that made Sofia glance at a spreadsheet on her screen, tilt her head, and answer in a low tone Amanda couldn't hear. The analyst laughed. Real laughter. Amanda stepped fully into the kitchen. The analyst looked up first and nearly straightened herself into a medical event. Good morning, Ms. Mercer. Amanda gave a cool nod and moved toward the coffee machine. Sofia looked at her once, directly, level as ever. Most people start with good morning. Amanda set a cup beneath the machine with unnecessary precision. Most people aren't already in my way before 8:30. The analyst made a tiny sound that suggested she would very much like to stop existing for the next few minutes. Sofia didn't move. Good to know, she said mildly. Amanda pressed the espresso button. I'm glad my standards continue to educate. The analyst gathered her laptop. I have a call. Amanda didn't look at her. Then you should go. The woman vanished. The kitchen fell quiet again except for the low hiss of the machine and the city breathing somewhere far below the glass. Amanda should have taken her coffee and left. Instead, she said, still facing the counter, you seem to be settling in quickly. Sofia rested one hip lightly against the marble. You make that sound like a security concern. Amanda turned then, cup in hand. Should I be concerned? Sofia met her gaze without visible effort. I guess that depends on how territorial you are before caffeine. Amanda hated that line immediately. Not because it was bold. Because it was good. Because Sofia never sounded like she was trying to provoke, and yet kept doing it anyway. Amanda took one measured sip of coffee she did not want. You seem comfortable speaking that way to people above your pay grade. One corner of Sofia's mouth moved. Not a smile. Not enough to soften the line of her face. Do I? Amanda's eyes narrowed. Sofia picked up her mug, glanced once at Amanda's bandaged hand, then back up. How's the injury? It's healing. Good. That word again. Simple. Calm. Infuriating. Amanda said, your concern is touching. I wouldn't go that far. Amanda stared. Sofia held the look for one beat too long, then turned back to her coffee and let Amanda be the first one to leave. That was almost worse than anything else. By 10:30, Amanda had seen Sofia 3 times more than the structure of a sensible day required. Once outside compliance, where 2 department heads had her pinned between a glass wall and a conversation about escalation timelines, and somehow both looked calmer for it. Once in the hall near legal, where Connor was explaining something too long and Sofia cut the explanation cleanly in half with one question. And once, to Amanda's increasing irritation, through the window of a smaller conference room where Sofia stood at the screen beside a tangle of process maps and made half the room look disorganized simply by remaining composed. Amanda was not a woman given to fixation. She did not orbit. She did not linger mentally where she had no strategic reason to be. And yet by 11 she had already become aware of a new pattern in herself, sensing Sofia before she saw her. A slight shift in the office current. A pocket of laughter from a corner that usually sounded strained. A subtle loosening of posture in people who had been tight a moment before. Sofia did that. Without effort. Amanda told herself it was because Sofia was external to the hierarchy. Because outsiders always looked easier. Because people loved anyone who listened without carrying formal power over their mortgages. Reasonable explanations. None of them touched the real issue. The real issue was that Amanda had started looking for her. Not consciously. Not in ways she would ever admit. But enough. Enough to know when she had gone 10 minutes without hearing Sofia's name. Enough to notice when she stepped out of one room and did not immediately see dark hair pulled back near the next one. Enough to wonder with sudden and unwanted precision what Sofia looked like with that hair down. Amanda loathed herself a little for that thought. Only a little. Most of her attention was still busy resenting Sofia properly. She had lunch on the 12th floor again that day, though she told herself it was purely logistical. The executive dining room ran on the same principles as the lobby, only softer and more expensive. Smoked glass, dark wood, brass lighting designed to flatter people who already liked their own reflections, servers trained to glide, investors trained to hover, executives trained to look like they were not scanning the room for threat and advantage with every swallow of overpriced water. Amanda was halfway through a conversation with a private equity partner she disliked on principle when she saw Sofia near the windows. Not alone. Again. This time with Patricia from the board and one of the women from operations. Patricia was laughing. Actually laughing. Sofia was saying very little, which somehow made the effect worse. She had one hand around a water glass and the sort of relaxed posture that would have looked careless on almost anyone else. On her, it looked like confidence without exhibition. Amanda hated how often other women leaned in when Sofia spoke. Not because it mattered. Because it didn't. Because it shouldn't. The equity partner across from Amanda was still talking about strategic alignment, as if any human being had ever bled from hearing that phrase too often. Amanda said in exactly the right place and watched, past his shoulder, as Sofia turned her head and looked straight at her from across the room. No smile. No surprise. Just recognition. The smallest hold. Then release. Amanda forgot the next sentence the man said, which was unacceptable. She ended lunch 12 minutes early. On her way out, Patricia caught her in the aisle near the host stand. Amanda, she said warmly, you stole our consultant. Amanda's expression didn't change. Did I? Patricia smiled. She's interesting. Amanda's gaze moved once, involuntarily, toward the windows where Sofia was still seated now, one elbow on the table, listening while the woman from operations talked. She's temporary, Amanda said. Patricia's smile turned slightly sharper. So are most useful things. Amanda gave her one cool look and kept walking. But the line stayed with her all the way back to the private elevators. So are most useful things. Yes. Exactly. That was the point, wasn't it? Temporary was manageable. Temporary ended. Temporary did not belong in your thoughts at 1 in the morning, or in the precise electric memory of a wrist still held too firmly under another woman's fingers. Temporary should have felt safe. Why, then, did the word irritate her so much? And if you're still here with me, take a second to like and subscribe. Stories like this only reach more people when YouTube sees real engagement. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from, and what moment is getting under your skin the most so far. At 3, Amanda finally had what should have been an easy win. A restructuring review. Finance unprepared. Operations defensive. Legal too wordy. Exactly the kind of room where Amanda did her best work. Conference room C was colder than the others, all gray light and screen glare, the city behind the windows reduced to rain-streaked glass. Amanda stood at the end of the table with one hand braced against the polished wood, gold hair perfect, voice cleaner and sharper the more everyone else faltered. No, she said to finance without raising her voice. Try again with numbers that belong to the real world. Silence. Then the finance VP cleared his throat and began again. Amanda cut him off halfway. Stop smoothing the problem and tell me where it actually starts. He did. Eventually, by the time she was finished, the room had become exactly what she preferred. Tight, attentive, stripped of all decorative nonsense. Then Sofia spoke. Not loudly. Not challengingly. She just looked at the revised model on the screen and said, "You're solving the wrong hesitation point." Amanda turned. The room tightened a second time. Am I? Sofia stood near the wall screen in a dark blazer, tablet in one hand. Yes. Feet. Then, because Sofia apparently had no interest in living a long, easy life, she added, this model assumes the delay begins with bad judgment in the middle layer. It doesn't. It begins higher up, where everyone waits too long trying to predict the top before they make a move. No one in the room breathed. Amanda felt the words like a clean blade laid against something already under pressure. Not because they were rude. Because they were too close to accurate. Her expression remained cool. And your preferred interpretation? Sofia met her gaze. That the company's very efficient at executing certainty and not very efficient at surviving ambiguity. Amanda folded her arms slowly. Most people hearing the silence that followed would have called it tension. That wasn't right. It was focus. The kind Amanda used when deciding whether something in front of her deserved destruction or respect. Finally, she said, "Then we train for ambiguity." Sofia nodded once. That would help. Amanda should have been annoyed by the lack of visible deference. Instead, she found herself watching the line of Sofia's mouth when she spoke, the steadiness in her eyes, the total absence of performance. They finished the meeting in 22 more minutes. As people filed out, Amanda remained by the table, pretending to review notes she had already memorized. Sofia gathered her tablet from the side console. Amanda said, without looking up, "You enjoy disagreeing with me in public." Sofia paused. "Only when I'm useful." Amanda lifted her eyes then. Rainlight touched the edge of Sofia's face, softening nothing important. Amanda said, "That sounds like an excuse." Sofia's gaze stayed level. "It's a job description." Amanda should have ended it there. Instead, she asked, "Do you always answer that way?" Sofia considered her for one dangerous beat. "Do you always ask questions you don't want answered?" That landed lower than it should have. Amanda's mouth curved without warmth. "Careful." Sofia did not flinch. "Should I be worried?" she asked. "Or is this just your personality?" There was again. That line of dry humor beneath competence. That refusal to treat Amanda like weather. Amanda felt the live wire under her skin spark once more. "Go do your job, Ms. Bennett." Sofia's mouth moved almost imperceptibly. "Trying," she said, and walked out. Amanda remained where she was, staring at the rain on the glass and feeling irritated by the exact wrong things. That Sofia had challenged her so cleanly, that she'd been right enough to matter, and that Amanda was no longer entirely certain which part of that unsettled her most. She worked late on purpose. Going home too early had begun to feel like admitting the day had not won. Her office at 718 was a glass box of blue-black city and immaculate order. Her blazer was off. One cuff undone. A legal memo open on the desk and utterly unreadable for reasons that had very little to do with law. At 7:26, her assistant knocked softly and stepped in. "One thing before I go." Amanda looked up. "There's a team dinner tonight for the audit group," her assistant said. A few people invited Sofia since she helped clean up that reporting mess. Amanda's expression did not change. "Did they?" Her assistant blinked. "Yes." Amanda set down her pen. "And why is that information useful to me?" A pause. "It probably isn't." "Good." Her assistant nodded too quickly. "Then I'll good night." The door shut. Amanda stared at it for 3 seconds. Then she stood, crossed to the windows, and looked down at the city as if Manhattan itself might explain why the thought of Sofia at a casual team dinner with people laughing too easily around her made something hot and sharp rise in her chest. Ridiculous. Absurd. Unprofessional. Also impossible to ignore. At 7:41, Amanda did something she had absolutely no business doing. She went to the executive kitchen. Not because she wanted coffee. Because she wanted evidence. The kitchen was empty. For one humiliating second, disappointment moved through her. Then the terrace door opened and Sofia stepped in from outside with the evening on her. dark coat over one arm, hair still pulled back but loosened at the temples by wind, the city reflected in the glass behind her. She stopped when she saw Amanda. Not startled. Not uneasy. Just alert. Amanda hated how quickly that made the room feel smaller. "You're still here," she said. Sofia set her coat over the back of a chair. "You say that like I've committed to something." Amanda crossed one arm over her waist. "I was told there was a dinner." "There is." Amanda lifted a brow. "And yet." Sofia moved toward the counter and reached for a glass. "I'm deciding whether I'm in the mood to hear people tell the same story 3 times after 2 drinks. Amanda almost smiled. "Almost. That sounds wise." Sofia filled the glass with water and leaned lightly against the marble. "I didn't realize I had your approval." Amanda looked at her fully now. The under-cabinet lights softened the angles of the room, the skyline behind them glowing in wet blue and gold. Sofia looked tired, maybe, but not frayed. Human in a way she almost never looked inside meetings. Less polished. More dangerous. Amanda said, "You seem popular." "There. Not elegant, perhaps, but true." Sofia's eyes sharpened with immediate comprehension. "Does that bother you?" Amanda's voice cooled a degree. "Should it?" Sofia didn't answer right away. She just watched Amanda, taking in too much as usual. The exact set of her shoulders, the way one hand was pressed too tightly against her opposite arm, the faint edge in her breathing that most people would never hear. Then she said, very quietly, that almost sounded personal. Amanda went still. The line itself wasn't lethal. The fact that Sofia had placed it so cleanly was. Amanda's answer came low and exact. "Don't flatter yourself." Sofia took a sip of water, eyes still on her over the rim of the glass. "Wouldn't dream of it." The silence between them sharpened. Amanda hated that she couldn't seem to stop stepping deeper into it. She moved closer to the counter, close enough now that they no longer had the whole room between them. Sofia noticed. Of course she noticed. Amanda said, "You're very comfortable here for someone this temporary." Sofia set the glass down. "You keep using that word like you're trying to remind yourself of something." That hit harder than it should have. Amanda's jaw tightened. "I'm reminding you." Sofia looked at her for a long second. Then softer, "No, you're not." Amanda felt the impact of that everywhere. In her mouth, in her pulse, in the fine, humiliating awareness of her own body becoming too awake whenever Sofia dropped her voice like that. Amanda said, "You think you know a great deal." "No," Sofia said. "I think you're very easy to read when you're trying not to be." Amanda laughed once. Sharp. Disbelieving. "That confidence of yours is becoming exhausting." Sofia's mouth shifted, not quite kind. "You look annoyed." Again. Amanda stared at her. Sofia held the look calmly. That was the unbearable part. She never rushed. Never filled the room with obvious challenge. She just remained where she was and let Amanda do all the moving, all the reacting, all the dangerous revealing. Amanda's voice lowered. "You make small talk sound like provocation. You make provocation sound like policy." That one nearly got her. Nearly. Amanda inhaled once through her nose and said the only thing left that felt remotely safe. "Good night, Sofia." She turned toward the door. Sofia's voice stopped her halfway there. "You keep noticing me," she said. "That can't be helping." Amanda stopped. Only for a second. Then she walked out without looking back. That should have been the end of the day. It wasn't. By habit more than intention, Amanda went up to her office instead of down to the car waiting for her. She stood in the darkened glass of her own reflection and tried to finish 2 emails that should have taken 4 minutes and instead took 15. At 8:12, she gave up. The terrace at the end of the executive floor was empty except for rain-dark furniture, soft light, and the city turning colder by the minute. Amanda stepped outside for air and immediately saw Sofia already there, one hand on the railing, looking down over the river of lights below. Of course she was. For one absurd moment, Amanda considered retreating. Instead, she crossed the terrace. Sofia turned at the sound of her heels. Neither of them spoke at first. The city did enough of that for both of them. Sirens in the distance, traffic below, the faint hiss of rain on faraway streets. Amanda stopped a few feet away. "You have a talent for being exactly where I don't want you to be." Sofia looked back out over the skyline. "That sounds less like strategy and more like very bad luck." Amanda should have laughed that off. Instead she said, Do you always answer everything like this? Sofia glanced over. Like what? Like you're not aware of what you're doing. Sofia grew quieter then. More focused. The kind of quiet that made Amanda's skin feel too tight. What do you think I'm doing? Amanda turned toward her fully. That's the question, isn't it? Sofia watched her in silence. Wind lifted one loose strand of Amanda's hair and pressed cool against the heat rising under her skin. Finally, Sofia said, I think you're trying very hard to turn this into irritation. Amanda's mouth thinned. This. Sofia stepped away from the railing and faced her now. You're angry too fast. You watch too closely. You talk to me like I've personally offended your sense of order. Amanda went still. The city seemed to sharpen around them. And your professional assessment, she said quietly, is what? Sofia held her gaze for one long, impossible beat. That you're not actually angry at me. Amanda's breath stalled. No one in the office had ever spoken to her like this. Nod and remained standing. What exactly, Amanda asked, voice low as glass, would you suggest I'm angry at? Sofia's expression didn't soften. Not at all. That would have been easier to survive. Instead, she said, I don't know yet. Feet. Then. But I'm starting to think it has very little to do with me, and a lot to do with what happens to you around me. The line landed clean and devastating. Amanda felt it in her throat first, then lower, then everywhere. Her body had already betrayed her enough in private. Hearing someone else put shape to it was infinitely worse. She said the first thing that came to hand. You're making an extraordinary number of assumptions. Sofia nodded once, accepting the blow without retreat. Probably. That answer almost made Amanda lose patience. You think this is amusing? No. Sofia took one step closer. Not enough to crowd. Enough to matter. Amanda's whole body registered it. No one else in the world would have seen the change. Sofia did. No, Sofia repeated. I think you don't know what to do with me. Amanda's pulse kicked once hard. The line should have angered her. Instead, it struck with the sickening force of truth. Amanda's eyes flashed. That's a dangerous amount of confidence for someone under contract. Sofia's gaze moved over her face, then to her wrist, then back to her eyes. It was a terrible thing being looked at that carefully. It was worse that Amanda wanted it. Sofia said, lower now. I can handle being unpopular. Amanda stepped closer. Not enough to touch. Enough to make the space between them feel live. That would require me to care. Sofia's mouth moved at one corner. Would it? That did it. Amanda looked away first, toward the city, toward the Black River, toward anything that wasn't the woman in front of her seeing too much too fast. Her voice, when it came, had lost some of its steel. You should go to your dinner. Sofia didn't answer right away. Then, you should go home. Amanda almost smiled from sheer disbelief. Are you giving me instructions now? Not yet. The air changed again. Hotter now. Sharper. Alive. Amanda turned back toward her and found Sofia watching her with an intensity that was no longer entirely professional, no longer entirely detached. There. That was new. That mattered. Amanda said, You're very sure of yourself. Sofia answered without looking away. No. I'm starting to think you're not. For a second, all Amanda could hear was wind and blood and the city far below. Then she laughed once. It sounded brittle even to her. Good night, Sofia. She left before the line could stay in her body any longer. Behind her, she could feel Sofia not following, which was somehow the most provocative thing she'd done all day. Amanda slept badly again. But now the problem had shape. Not certainty. Not language she was willing to use. But shape. She knew what it was not. Not simple irritation. Not professional friction. Not ego alone. It was something worse because it made her feel less like herself and more like someone she might have been if life had taught her different lessons. Amanda lay awake in the dark with one arm across her waist and the city glow faint beyond the glass. She thought of the lobby, the lunchroom, the terrace, the exact moment Sofia had stepped closer and not touched her. She thought of how carefully Sofia moved, how little she said, how much she somehow managed to communicate anyway. And beneath all of that, like a second pulse running under the first, she thought of her own body, too honest, too fast, answering every time. By morning, she knew one thing with humiliating clarity. Sofia Bennett was no longer merely in the building. She was under Amanda's skin. If this episode pulled you in, like the video and subscribe so YouTube keeps pushing stories like this. And in the comments, tell me where you're listening from and what moment stayed with you the most. In the next episode, Amanda's world gets harder to control, and someone from her past notices exactly why.